Hi guys! So it's been a while since I've come on live and done any kind of a training, and I'm really excited today about the training that I am bringing you. I just got off a call with one of my extraordinary clients who is just so down for the deep transformation work that's required to become like your best self in order to have that really extraordinary partnership. And we just got to the core of something really profound that I think will serve you deeply and give you some profound insights and shifts. So I wanted to come on with the energy from the call, just still buzzing in me, and share what kind of came up and what we talked about, because I think it's just going to be so helpful for you. So if you have ever struggled with feeling not good enough or not worthy or not lovable, if you've ever had walls up to keep people out, to protect you from being hurt or rejected, if you've ever put on a facade or a persona to feel like you might be accepted or to be accepted, if this kind of thing shows up with men, then this live is for you, and you're gonna wanna stick around for the whole thing because there's just like breakthrough after breakthrough and what I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm just going to start by saying that I relate to all of this. For most of my life, being myself was not something that I felt safe doing. It felt really vulnerable. It felt like I just couldn't, right? I felt like people would judge me. They might make fun of me. They would find something out about me that was just fundamentally unacceptable. And actually, I was even ashamed that I had that fear. So the word for all of that is shame, right? That all of that is just shame. So at some fundamental core level, there's this shame, and most humans have this because this is part of what we work through as humans, right? But I also just had shame about my emotions. I would never allow myself to cry in front of people. I had shame about experiences that I'd had. I had shame about things that I had done, right? And so when I started doing this work, what I found at a fundamental level was this feeling of being unacceptable. For me, that was I'm unacceptable. There's just something about me that is unacceptable. And maybe for you, if you were to dig to what is there, the root of that, maybe it would be I'm unworthy, or I'm not good enough, or I'm unlovable. So this fundamental emotion of shame is tied back to those, right? And it comes from experiences that we had as very, very, very little children, sometimes so little that we don't have the memory of the core experience. But we made meanings about what happened, and that reflected on who we thought we were at a fundamental level. That's where we get those meanings from. And they're such core memories that it feels like it's just true, right? So maybe your parents were emotionally distant or unavailable. Maybe they didn't really give you much time or attention. Maybe emotions were not allowed in your home, or they were looked down on, or you judged yourself for that because of it, for feeling your emotions so strongly. Maybe you felt like a disappointment or like something was wrong with you, right? And because you weren't getting your emotional experiences mirrored back at you and being said, it's okay, that's normal, it's fine, oh, I feel you, right? You felt very alone. Hi, Lisa. Oh, awesome. Hi. So that actually created even more anxiety, even more of that feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, whatever that core thing is for you, right? Because then you had all of this unfelt, unprocessed stuff, right? And that is the shame. That's the core of the shame, right? It could have been a lack of being emotionally seen and held, right? On the other end, there can be other factors here too, right? Maybe you were pushed to be the best, and any time that you were less than perfect at something that your parents valued, you felt not good enough, you felt shame, right? So you were probably a straight A student, a really high achiever, somebody who pushes yourself to the limits to achieve really big goals, to prove something, right? To measure up to something, but then you can never get there, right? So it's always the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and there's no end to that, right? You probably then have a lot of your sense of identity coming from what you've done or accomplished, right? Maybe you're at a different end, right? So you became more of like a super caretaker, and very good at reading other people's emotions, right? Very empathetic. And so you're really, really attuned to other people's needs, and maybe even feel ashamed of having any of your own. You became this really strong, independent woman where it's shameful to need help or to need anyone, right? These are all different possibilities depending on what your experience was growing up. And so there was home, right? There was family life. And even if you had like a childhood that you're like, actually my childhood was fine, my parents were great, there would have been these moments of disconnect, because that's just part of what happens when we're very little, that our parents don't respond the way that we expect them to or want them to, and meanings get made. So it doesn't even mean that you had like a childhood where there was trauma or like big things. It could have been small things. But in addition to that, so there's home, and then there's what happened with other children, like at school, right? So bullying, meanness, feeling like being an outcast, being made fun of. And those also then get layered on top as well. And sometimes this is where that core stuff comes from. It's not home necessarily, it's from school. And even just one instance became ingrained in a part of how you see yourself, right? And up to today, who it's safe for you to be or not safe for you to be, right? So like for me, I had one experience in 5th grade where I raised my hand in class. I was generally a quiet kid. I didn't really do that. I did it one day, and the class bully called me out and challenged me on what I had said. And I knew I was right, but I decided I was never going to talk again in front of the whole class for the rest, and I did not for the rest of middle school. So I was 5th grade all the way through 8th grade, never said another word, never raised my hand in class, had terror about being called on. So there was this part of me that wanted so badly not to be the quiet, shy girl, because a part of me knew that that wasn't even really me, right? But I put myself in that box in order to stay safe, right? To not feel that feeling of shame or like I'd done something wrong by speaking or saying the wrong thing, quote unquote, right? And also because of that, I carried that, the boys in my grade sometimes were like bullying, and being one of the quieter, shyer girls, that I would sometimes be a target of that. So I also carried from that like men, I'm scared of men are mean, right? Boys are mean. So I was afraid of being made fun of. So I basically avoided any boys all through middle school, even into high school, especially the good-looking ones, because of the fear of them laughing at me for something I did or said. I didn't want to feel that exposed. I didn't want to feel that vulnerable. And I didn't feel safe with men for years because of those experiences. So I had a ton of work to do to rewire all of that so I could actually date. And by the way, I had 2 amazing brothers, right? So it was separate from that, right? So I remember thinking, like, why would a guy like that be interested in me? Okay. Outcomes of this, all kinds of different addictions. I had an eating disorder, right? And this is all just unprocessed shame, unprocessed stuff that happened, right? I didn't learn until years later, though, that was kind of at the root of this, right? That I hadn't actually done healing work. I just like forced myself to stop, right? And maybe you relate. I know a lot of the women who come to work with me have had some experience, and this is so common, unfortunately, in our world, right? Girls with eating disorders, issues around our bodies, and all of this stuff, it's unprocessed shame, it's unprocessed emotion, it's stuff that happened that then got carried and we didn't know what to do with it, right? So tell me in the comments if you relate. What's your experience with shame and childhood? Do you see yourself in that, and do you see maybe where it may be placed, right? So let me know in the comments. So when we carry this core shame, there's a belief that you can't be who you are, right? That it is not safe, it is not acceptable. And so you end up looking to other people to give you permission to be who you are, right? So meaning that they have to go first, they have to open first, they have to recognize you first, they have to make it safe first, and only then will you share yourself and be yourself. So basically, we end up giving all our power away to other people, right? They get to determine who we can or cannot be. And that could mean not wanting to smile at strangers that you pass on the sidewalk for fear of them not reciprocating. It could mean not wanting to go up and talk to the cute guy for fear of him not reciprocating. Because if they don't, that continues to reinforce the shame, that core belief that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not acceptable in some fundamental way, right? And so the reason that we link these two things is because we have all of these parts of us in us, right, that are basically trapped at an age a certain experience happened and they have not moved forward. So when we are little, we really don't have a concept of other people being their own autonomous beings, living their own lives that may have nothing to do with us. Basically, to us, the world revolves around us, right? That's developmentally appropriate to see it that way. But the impact of that is that anything anyone does, we see as reflecting something about us, right? And that's where we get those beliefs. So, for example, I have a client who noticed that she had no problem talking to most people, but she totally freezes with really cute guys she's really attracted to. She'll hold back, she'll put up a protective wall, she'll just avoid the guy. By the way, I've done this, so let me know if you resonate with that. So when we did some digging, we uncovered that there was this subconscious memory from being 5 years old on the playground, playing with a cute boy or trying to play with a cute boy. And she was trying to get his attention to play with him, but he ended up turning away from her to go play with another girl. Has anyone else had an experience like that with a boy? So the 5-year-old her read the situation as he has rejected me, right? He did not reciprocate my interest, my attention, and that felt really bad to 5-year-old her, right? And so this part made what happened mean that boys don't like me back. This is what happens when I try, right, to create the connection. So notice how these young parts in us, they see and speak only in black and white and in absolutes, right? It had this one experience and then that got layered over all boys in all situations, right? So it wasn't just this one boy now, it was all boys, right? It wasn't just this one circumstance with this one boy this one day, it was all the time, right? All boys always happens. So my example from earlier was like, never ever speak in class again because this is what's going to happen if I do, right? So little her did not have the emotional processing ability that adult her now has. And that situation felt bad, right? Kind of like how we learn, at least when I was growing up, we had these radiators that would heat up with hot water, right? And if you touched them when they were hot, you would burn your hand. They were extremely, extremely hot, right? So you do that once, you learn don't touch the radiator because you burnt your hand, right? You're never going to do that again. It's kind of like the same thing, right? We learn never to do that again. We do it once and we will never do it again. Right, so she decided not to reach out again to a boy, and that extended for the rest of her life till we started working together. So the thing is that this only has to happen once, right? We make these decisions about who we can or cannot be and what will or will not happen to us that literally exist subconsciously for the rest of our lives, and they control what we will and won't do until we begin to uncover them. Like, there was this one time, right, where I was questioned in class and then I never spoke for 4 years, and it took a lot of my own effort when I got to high school with a new group of kids to be like, okay, now I'm not going to be the quiet girl who never talks. And that took so much conscious effort because it would have been so much easier and felt so much safer to never talk in class ever again. But I, literally through force of will change that, didn't heal where it originally came from. And so you end up having to heal that later, right? So when we did the work to fully clear this belief and the root experience, what she realized was that she was actually set free, literally from that moment on, to be a totally different woman with men. Because we can actually clear out the root. It doesn't have to be something like, I'm just gonna force this, because that actually doesn't really work. We have to get to the actual root, the core of it, right? So what she really wanted to be was to be able to feel like she could be herself with anyone, to be unattached to a man's response, to just be open, warm, and authentic, and feel like she could just be herself and feel safe and good doing that. And so this was a block that she had not known was there, to her being able to actually be this way with the men she really liked. And so what I want you to understand is that most of the decisions that we make, we aren't aware that we made them, right? We aren't even aware that they're controlling our reality because we're creating it through the beliefs we have, what we think is possible, what we think we can and cannot do. But they determine what we will and won't do, what we think is possible, what we think is not possible for the rest of our lives unless we uncover them. And so we end up living in these boxes that constrain us, right? And we don't realize that we have this box that's constraining us because we think that is just how life is. We think that is just who I am. That we think that is just what men are like, right? So the analogy that I really like to go along with this is what happens to baby elephants, like when they are owned, right, by a zoo or something, a circus. So when they're babies, they are tied with a rope, right, to stakes in the ground, like these wooden stakes in the ground. And the baby elephants are babies, right? They're not very strong, and so they try to pull out the stake, right? They try to like pull the rope away, and they can't because they're not strong enough. And they learn really quickly that pulling the rope isn't going to do any good, and so they stop trying to pull the rope. This is learned helplessness. They don't try anymore for the rest of their lives. They never try to pull that stake out again. And when they grow up, they're these huge, giant elephants. With one little tug, they could pull that stake out of the ground, and they do not try to do it. Because in their minds, they think, I can't pull that stake out of the ground. I'm not going to be able to go anywhere. It's like, I can't touch that radiator, right? And so they don't. They don't even need anything anymore to keep them there. They will not go anywhere. And that's us as adults, right? There are so many limits that we have built up over the course of our lives that we don't even realize are limits. We just think this is how it is. So if we go back to that 5-year-old, she decided from then on not to make the first move with boys, not to put herself in that vulnerable position, not to be too friendly or too warm or too open or to reach out, right? Especially if he's a cute guy, because in that scenario he was, and that just got applied to all cute guys, right? Because it didn't work that one time and it felt too bad. And so what happened was she wasn't being her authentic self with new people, especially attractive men, because of the fear of rejection was so strong. And this is the same way that I would have been then after experiencing boys bullying me in like elementary and middle school, right? So oftentimes we learn these things first in our childhood homes. What our experience of love and connection was there becomes what we replicate because it's what we know, right? So in a case where we've decided that it's not safe to go first, right, to reach out first, then we're only going to give if we feel like it would be reciprocated. We won't take a risk, right? We would only reach out if we felt someone would respond in the way that we wanted. So we will just not reach out anymore, right? He disappeared was my story. We won't go up to the guy on the street and have a real conversation with him because what if he rejects me or turns away, right? We are not going to show our vulnerable side. We're not going to show parts of ourselves because that's going to be rejected or laughed at or shut down, right? And this is all childhood programming running in the background, like that grown elephant tied to the stake thinking I can't pull it out. And so what happens is we live our lives based on the past. You know, we are giving our power away to other people, and they don't even have the power, but we think they do, right? So only if he responds well am I going to respond well or be warm, right? Based on some idea I can be when I feel received and reciprocated. Only if he calls, texts, asks me out, schedules his time around how I want him to, that's going to prove to me that I'm good enough, right? Then will I allow myself to feel safe enough to be myself, to feel validated, to feel good enough. And if he doesn't do those things, typically what I see on the other side of this is, well, then he's a bad person, right? Because I was nice, I gave, and he didn't reciprocate in kind. It's not true. He's not a bad person. Remember, this is the child self thinking the world revolves around her. Also, it also means I'm not good enough because if I were, then he would have responded differently. Also, not true. But remember, this is old programming, right? The boy in the playground wouldn't have turned his back on me. My parents, my mom or my dad wouldn't have been emotionally or physically unavailable if I was good enough. not a truth, but that feels like it is. So what happens is that we end up living as a safe kind of shadow version of ourselves. A lot of us end up in a masculine state because that feels safer, with that wall, because that feels safer. It is not safer, that's not true, but that's what it feels like, right? Because of the stakes that we've got. So we don't get to be the fullest expression of who we are. We're constantly looking for people outside of us, to validate that who we are is okay, is good enough, is worthy, is acceptable. And therefore, how we're going to feel about ourselves and whether or not we allow ourselves to fully be ourselves is conditional. It's unstable. It's dependent on things that are actually outside of our control. So then we try to control everything. This is the false masculine showing up, right? Because I've put my power outside of myself. So now I need to control everything and everyone around me so I can feel okay, so I can feel good enough, right? And A, that's really exhausting. And B, it's never going to work. Because we can't control the other people. We cannot control circumstances. And so this is a kind of codependency, actually, because I'm giving a man, strangers, some circumstance, the guy I've gone on 3 dates with, the power to determine if I'm good enough and if I can be myself. And what I saw in myself and what I see in so many women is that we then build a persona of who we think is acceptable, right? And that's who we will show the world, only this part of myself. Parts of ourselves that got praise, that got a positive response, and it's performative versus embodied and authentic, right? So we perform high achiever, we perform confidence, we perform laughter, we perform kindness, we perform whatever we got praised for, right? And so there's this disconnection between us and ourselves because we are not accessing all of us, and there's a disconnect between us and others. And they don't truly see us and they cannot truly connect with us, and therefore you cannot have true intimacy, true vulnerable, true relationship, right? True safety. Because we have this stake about whether or not people will respond well to seeing us, right? And so this is the wall that we then build to hide vulnerable emotions, to hide vulnerable parts of ourselves, to hide the shame that we feel, because even shame is shameful. So when we get rejected, as we are sure we will be, it will hurt less because they didn't really know me. This is typically how it shows up. So why does it hurt when someone doesn't choose us? It hurts because we make it mean something about us, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not acceptable, that I'm not lovable, and that's not true. It's a form of giving our power away to somebody else. They probably didn't even think of it like that at all. And if they did, are you going to say that they get to have the final say in this, right? Are you? What about all the people who do accept you, love you, think you're more than enough, think you're amazing? What about you? The decision that you get to make to back yourself, just to decide that you are enough, period. Right? When we allow other people's responses to decide who we can be, then we don't really have access to who we are. And we're showing up with the world in this very conditional way. I will only give if you give back to me. So that because of that, you have power over me. You're the one who determines who I will be. So if a man texts the way I want, when I want, then I'll be nice and I'll respond. If a man gives me the time I want him to give, then I'll be warm, open, and non-critical of him. And if not, then it means something about him and it means something about me. So watch out, because if you don't, him, like, he's gonna have to watch out, because if he doesn't, then you're gonna see him as a bad person, which doesn't feel safe to him, right? Because if you flip that, you imagine a man showing up like that with you, that would not feel safe. So this has to do with being able to see other people as separate human beings, separate from you, unattached from you or your relationship or to what they can give or do for you. If we're not seeing what we could just give without losing anything, we will only feel like we would lose if we go into something, right? And then we give of ourselves, right? But we went into it with this expectation, right? That I'm only going to give if I'm going to get back, right? And that's not going to feel safe to the person on the other side of that relationship. Because if you imagine being on the other side of that equation, would that feel good, right? Imagine a man showing up with that energy, which Men also can do this, right? So I want you to understand that why we behave the way we do and the limits that we have with relationships in our lives, the patterns that we play out again and again, are the result of programming, often so old that you don't even have a memory of it or you don't realize how that's impacted you, right? So my job is to help you uncover it and rewire it and help you see that stake, right? And pull it out of the ground. So I want you to picture yourself as that elephant who is no longer a baby elephant but still thinks it's that baby elephant, right? And you don't just have one stake in the ground, and this is important. You do not just have one, right? You have a lifetime's worth of stakes. However long that you have been alive, you've been having experiences and making meaning from every single one. Sometimes positive meaning and sometimes not helpful meaning, right? And you've been making decisions about who you are and what will happen for you if you do X, Y, Z, and about what you can and cannot do. Those are all your stakes, right? So imagine every single incident that happened in life, you have certain patterns that developed because of that, right? Around how you see and interact with life and with other people and with yourself. And so in my work, we're usually looking at your patterns with men in relationship with love and also with yourself, because everything is mirroring how you see that, right? So some of those ropes have been reinforced again and again, right? If it feels true to you, just because it's so many times that you've had something happen and you assign the same exact meaning to it, right? The neural pathways are very deeply ingrained. And some happen more recently, because it doesn't matter when in life it happened. The older ones are the most ingrained, but you can have new ones that happen, especially from really profound events in your life, right? Positive or negative. Some are so old that you can't remember a time without that belief, and it's not a belief to you. It is a reality. It feels true. It is true, right? And if someone tries to tell you, hey, you could just pull that stake out of the ground, you'd be like, no, I definitely can't. That's definitely true. That belief that I'm not good enough, that belief that I'm unworthy, that belief that there is something shameful about me, that belief about how love is, how men are, what will and will not work for you, what will and will not happen for you, how you know yourself to be, all of that is your programming. Right? And so this ties to attachment style. This is the way you be in life, in love, with men, with anyone, with yourself, right? This is how you make decisions in your life and how you therefore keep getting the same results that you've been getting, right? Because you are still seeing everything through the lens of that, right? That particular stake or stakes that are combined with that. And this is your patterns with men. This is where it comes from. So the opportunity here is to discover and uncover what your programming is. What are the stakes that you have that you don't even realize you have, that you're tied to and you don't realize you're tied to, or that you have awareness of, right? Maybe you actually know this pattern, you know this belief that plays out, but you don't know how to free yourself from it, right? That's also possible. So what beliefs are running your life and limiting who you can be in your life, what kind of relationship you can have, the depth of love that you can experience with a man, another human being, and to actually be able to remove all of the ones that are not serving you, because they've gotten you here where you are, but they won't get you where you want to go. They've gotten you here. This is where they take you, right? So if you want a different kind of relationship, if you want a different kind of experience with men and with dating, if you want love that lasts, that feels good, that is healthy, loving, secure, and you want to be a more empowered version of yourself in life and relationships, but you have not had those things, or you've had but haven't been able to maintain those things, this is why. And I believe that our purpose here on earth is to grow and to evolve. But I think that the personal development industry, especially when we first find it, we can kind of get lost in trying to change or fix ourselves. Like we think this is the answer to the thing that we think is wrong with ourselves, because remember, we have those core beliefs, right? And that's our trauma, that I'm not good enough, not worthy, not lovable, there's something I need to fix about me. And so the work I do is actually the opposite of trying to fix, right? You have all these layers of conditioning from all these experiences. And what I do isn't fix you. I help you reconnect with the truth of who you actually are underneath that and behind that and without that, right? The soul that you were when you were born, before life happened to get you back to the truth of your inherent worthiness, your wholeness, your knowingness, your power, your intuition, your strength, your wisdom, right? Because that you, which is who you actually are, knows how to love, knows how to attract and choose the right love, knows who is right for her and who isn't, knows what to do in different situations, knows how to navigate the ups and downs of dating and relationships, knows her worth, embodies high value femininity naturally. She does. That's you. So the work I do is stripping away all of your conditioning, all of your programming to the real you, the essence of you who is perfect, whole, and complete. Always has been, always will be. Just the stakes got in the way, right? So you just lost touch with her. You forgot to be her. You forgot how to be her. You have all the stakes. That's it. So there's nothing to fix. There's nothing wrong. There's just the operating system that needs to be cleared out, rewired so it works better for you. So you can get the results you actually want in your life and feel the way that you want to feel in your life. So there's this quote from Wordsworth that I really love, which is a longer poem, but he starts it with, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting," which I feel like really speaks to this, right? We are born so we can have this journey to actually go back to figure out who we actually are. So trying to fix ourselves and then realizing that we're actually perfect and coming back home to ourselves, remembering who we are and who we were always meant to be. And when we do that, that's when manifestation speeds up. This is when we begin to attract more and more of what we desire faster and faster. So this is when my clients attract their soulmate partner with ease and without the struggle. And that's really key here. Because wholeness, the wholeness and the love that we seek in others has to first be found or rediscovered in ourselves, right? Otherwise, we're putting our power outside of ourselves again. We are here to pair bond. We are here to share our lives with a partner, and that's a really beautiful thing, and that is what I help you do. But the way that I do that is through the core work that doesn't just get you the guy, because that's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to last. It's actually not going to feel good, right? It actually transforms you, right? Brings you closer to who you want to be and how you want to feel going through life. And then everything that you want is a natural outpouring of that. So to have that partner who comes into our lives in that healthy, sustainable way, we just get to free ourselves of the conditioning that holds us back. The blind spots that we have, these stakes are in our blind spots, we do not see them, right? And they cause us to keep repeating the same patterns and causing us the same pain again and again. So that's the work that I do. And I am taking one-on-one clients. So if this is something that you feel deeply resonates, right? You're feeling moved, you feel touched by, you felt something stirring in you, you know this is for you, and you can feel the pull to this work and to me, then I do offer that you reach out to me. You can send me a private message. What we'll do is we'll set up a time to just get on a call and chat about where you're at, what kind of support you're looking for around what areas, what things are showing up for you. And I'll give you all the details about working together, and we'll see if working together is a fit. It's always no pressure, but these calls are for women who really feel that this is probably their next step, right? They really feel like, I want this. They know the value of this for their lives, and they're truly ready to just go all in for themselves and own their worth and their deservingness to have that kind of a transformation for themselves and for the ripple effect that that will have literally for the rest of their lives on every relationship and every aspect of their lives. Because yes, this is about men, and yes, it will also touch every other area of your life. So this is, if you know, this is my next step, I really feel this, I'm really resonating with Elizabeth, and you're ready to walk with fear instead of run from fear, because it's always going to be there before you take a leap. So if that's you, if you'd like to know more, if you'd like to schedule a call, just send me a message. I'd love to talk to you, and I will see you later. Bye.